I've got an outline here. I'm going to go through the outline. To start with, let's talk about Zettelkasten. It's spelled Zettelkasten, I believe. There's a lot of talk on YouTube about Zettelkasten. Many YouTube videos. Modern Zettelkasten relies on the Obsidian app. It's called Obsidian, which is available for Linux, Mac, and Windows. Obsidian does what you see is what you get formatting for Markdown documents. The WYSIWYG formatting for Markdown documents. Markdown is a type of document. Ordinarily, you need to upload Markdown documents to a website like GitHub before you can see the formatting. You can also do this on Reddit, and sometimes, I'm not sure, maybe you can't do it on Stack Overflow, but you can do it on Reddit posts. So you can't do it, aside from using Obsidian, you can't do Markdown files, WYSIWYG formatting at home. Not easily. I have a Linux set up, and I use GNOME, and I use Nvim, Neovim, and I don't want to have to use some other editor to edit my files. I've spent a lot of time on Neovim plugins, and I don't want to throw that time away. So can you use Neovim for doing Zettelkasten? I don't know. The first problem is local formatting of Markdown files. Like I said, in most use cases, you can't see the formatting of Markdown files. You have to upload them to something like GitHub. But there is a command line program called Pandoc, and that's what I'm employing. You also have to get a hold of a reasonable cascading style sheet file in order to convert the Markdown into an HTML format. And then you have to open the HTML file in your browser. You can do that at home. You can open local files in your HTML browser. So there are specifics for Zettelkasten. You have to set up some folders on your computer and then try to establish some normal workflow. The problem with all the hubbub about Zettelkasten is that they don't say it's good for note taking, but they don't say what the goal would be. Like what is the reason you're taking all these notes? What is the final product? What are you trying to create at the end of all this? So what is the content of all your notes? What does it lead to? The original user of Zettelkast and the inventor had paper slips that he kept in boxes. And actually, I think Zettelkasten is German for slip of paper in a crate. I may have that wrong. But this guy wrote many books from his Zettelkasten. But I'm not going to write any books. So is there use for Zettelkasten in my life? So then again, maybe there is a use. I do notice that somewhere in my workflow, Zettelkasten might be useful, specifically when I write an email. when I write an email, I typically write the first draft in Neovim. I do this for myself. Nobody told me to do that. I just find it easier to edit in Neovim. Then I copy the text to the email program. In this case, it's Thunderbird. And I think to myself, maybe I can start sending all my email drafts to Zettelkasten in the Zettelkasten vault as I write them. So this brings up many workflow questions. And the first is, do I have a naming convention for these files that I'm going to save? And do I have a good location for the files? They call this in Obsidian, they call it the vault. And then finally, maybe I can automate the operation of this pandoc program so that it's not so tedious. So I've decided to use pandoc to format my markdown files. But it's kind of tedious. It's from the command line. You have to operate from the command line. So there's some random YouTuber out there who used shell scripts to automate his Zettelkasten workflow. And there are a couple of takeaways that I got from watching him. First off, the names for the scripts are really short. They're 2 letters at a time. And then I can save, like if I make up one of these helper scripts, I can save it to my dotfiles GitHub repository. I have a GitHub repository that I just keep dotfiles in. So I can save my shell scripts to that repository. And then, and so with all this said, I decided to write a couple of, write a shell script myself and see if I could improve my workflow. So the script that I wrote is called notes-file.sh. It does 3 things. It uses Neovim for editing, first off, and it has an alias, so that you don't have to type in notes-file.sh every time you use it. I use the alias, 2 letters as an alias, NF. So firstly, the shell script saves an individual file with the date and a file name. And then when it's done, when the script is finished, it runs pandoc. But you don't have to type in the pandoc command line. The script does it for you. The second thing it does is it'll edit a single file that you've made on another occasion, again with Neovim. And then when you're done, when you exit Neovim, it runs pandoc again for that file, updating it. And then thirdly, the third thing that it does, so the first 2 things, one, it makes a new file with the date and a descriptive string as the file name. 2, it allows you to edit a file that you've already finished. And 3, it allows you to edit a whole list of files all at once. And then when the Neovim instance is exited, it runs pandoc on all the files that you've edited. Those are the 3 things that the shell script helps you with. And then I made some additions to my Neovim configuration. The first thing, I made a command that would run the pandoc program from inside Neovim. And this was just so that I could test out the pandoc program. This is actually what I did first before the shell script. Before writing the shell script, I did the command for the pandoc program. And then I worked on a fuzzy finder that would allow you to search for strings inside the vault. And these would be strings like hashtag strings or prominent words or phrases. And then instead of, when the fuzzy finder closed, instead of opening the selected file in the browser in a new buffer, what this fuzzy finder did was he just pasted the file name into the editor line in question. So what it did was it made linking a lot easier. Linking between the Zettelkasten files made it easier to point from one file to another file. And then it's good to point out that pandoc is never, you don't have to execute the pandoc command by hand. There's a version of the pandoc script inside the Neovim instance, and there's a version of the pandoc script in the notes.-file shell script. So then what's my setup? The one that I propose is that there's a single vault at the location home folder documents vault. It's a vault in the documents folder, and it's called vault. And that's all, it's a flat location for all files. There's no subfolders inside vault, and nothing in my Zettelkasten setup goes anywhere but in the vault. They all go in the vault together. The naming convention for each individual file is the date, not the time, but the date, followed by a descriptive text string, and then the file type extension. I have, now the guy I saw on YouTube had several shell scripts, but I have just one that I use. And then after authoring this shell script and deciding what my where my vault would be and what my naming convention was, I saved all of my scripts and files in Neovim, rather in GitHub, in my dotfiles repository. Not the actual Zettelkasten files, but all this helper stuff. Detractors. Now, now to the next point is detractors would say, for one thing, your Zettelkasten doesn't have what you see is what you get formatting the way Obsidian does. And detractors would say that linking in your setup is not as good as in Obsidian. And then finally, people would note that there's a Vim key binding plugin for Obsidian. So you can use the Vim key bindings in Obsidian. And my response to those is you can set up your HTML viewer so that it takes the left side of your screen and set up the terminal with Nvim, Neovim in it on the right side of the screen and easily see what you're typing by refreshing the browser. And GNOME, the GNOME desktop, allows you to do this pretty easily. And actually, it would be even easier if you had a tiling window manager. So the second point, linking is not as good in Obsidian. That's true. The linking is not as good in Obsidian. That's too bad. And then the third point is there are Vim key bindings for Obsidian. Well, I have modified my key bindings in Neovim quite a lot. And all these modifications are pretty personal to me. Obsidian would not have these personal key bindings, and they would never have the personal key bindings. So why would I want to use Neovim? I would want to use Neovim. Why would I want to use Obsidian when I already have Neovim? And the key bindings can't be copied over to Obsidian. So those are my responses. So then finally, an example workflow. First, you turn on the computer and open a terminal, and then you type NF and then a string of words describing what you're writing about. The string can be arbitrarily long, and it's actually kind of better if it's long. And then the NF script opens up a Neovim terminal, and you get to enter your Zettelkasten file. You type in what is on your mind. And then edit hashtags as you like. You can add hashtags if you want. And then you can add links to other files in and out of the vault. They don't have to, I think you could link to something on the internet. I don't know. And then exit the file. Just exit Neovim. And the NF script, as it leaves, will run the pandoc program for you. And then the name that pandoc saves the file in is the date plus this long descriptive string that you typed when you opened NF. And then pandoc takes pandoc and the script together put the file that you created in the vault. It just puts it there. You could be in any directory you want. So that's the simple workflow. And then there's the workflow if you want to go back and change something, or you want to revisit something. Go to the vault folder in your terminal, run the NF command again, but this time instead of a descriptive string, enter the markdown file name of the file you're looking to open. This is actually not as hard as it sounds because of bash completion. In Linux, if you start typing the correct file name and you press the tab key, everyone knows this, you get the completed version of the file name. And then once you've run the NF command, you're greeted with an open Neovim. And edit the hashtags as you like, edit the links, edit the text, and then quit the Neovim editor, and your changes are saved, and they're written to the HTML document by pandoc and the NF script. And that's it. These are my 3 bibliographic notes. I'm going to try to include these in the comments below as well. The first is a note for a-dma. The proper name for this GitHub user is Alessio Di Mauro. I used a CSS file from a-dma's repo in my experiment. I modified it a lot, but I did start with that one from, and it's called Groovebox CSS on GitHub. The second note is for ibhagwan. I don't have a proper name for ibhagwan. but I received plenty of help from ibhagwan online. He or she maintains a plugin for Neovim, and that plugin is very accessible. The plugin is called fzf-lua. And that's the name of the plugin and the GitHub repository. And finally, there was this great video on YouTube from ZazenCodes. I don't have the proper name for ZazenCodes either. There are a lot of good ideas in that video. The video is called Note-Taking with Neovim and Obsidian, and the link for the video is somewhere below. And also, I'm going to include somewhere a link to my dotfiles repository on GitHub. Just, if you wanted to look at it, you could.